Hi, this is Dan Sullivan, and today Mike Koenigs and I on the Capability Amplifier podcast are going to explore a subject that we really haven't touched on, and it's the sudden, what I think in the last 2 years, sudden, tremendous both the importance and also the enormous opportunity of group engagement in a mastermind setting. And what I've been giving a lot of thought to, and Mike has too, about are there actually rules? Are there actually kind of formulas to this? So we don't have the answers, but we have all the questions. So we're going to explore the questions today.
And here's what I'll tell you what you can expect. First of all, Dan really reveals some of the deepest thinking I've witnessed in a long time. There's always great stuff. He's going to share his 4 types of thinking, some of his most powerful questions that get people to experience a different version of their future, and also what it takes to put together great groups that are super successful. So you can expect all that and more in this episode of Capability Amplifier. Thanks for being here. So here we are, Dan. We've been talking about something that I'm really interested in, and it is about group engagement and how to create really awesome group masterminds where people get a tremendous amount of value out of it. And I'm going to set this up for a couple things. First of all, I want to talk about specifically at Strategic Coach. You are an absolute master, and you really, really figured it out during Zoom. You adapted super quickly. Using Zoom during the pandemic. And it's creating super high engaging experiences and events and doing a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some great takeaways, but also in a traditional group environment, keeping people active, engaged, focused, and providing huge results and transformations. And my selfish reason for setting this up is, as you know, not long ago, I did one of these trips where I got a bunch of people together and we went fishing in Mexico. And it was right during the middle of all of the hoo-ha going on, but we still got people together. They're like, I got to get out of wherever I am. We went fishing, but we created these deep, meaningful connections where folks did exercises. They created relationships, both strong personal relationships, but also there were some business deals. One of them turned out to be an estimated $500 million. Another one were in the millions, and some other people started working together. Now, it turns out in a short period of time, I'm doing a wine mastermind in Guadalupe Valley, Mexico. I wish you were going to be there because the wine down there, there's 300 wineries in this region of just 2 hours south of San Diego. But once again, I'll be doing mastermind style groups intended to create deep connections, business deals, and collaborations. So I'll share a couple of the strategies I found as work for us, but I'm curious through your lens, both virtually and in person, what are some of the best group engagement exercises and resources you can share?
Yeah, I think just 2 rules that I think are true for either in-person or digital, virtual. And that is that the purpose has to be curated by one person.
Explain that. What does that mean?
Well, first of all, somebody calls the meeting. The person who calls the meeting states clearly what the purpose of the meeting is. Okay. As opposed to, hey, we're going to have a meeting, we're going to get together some really bright people. And you know how these things turn out, there's always some amazing new ideas that come to the surface when you have that. That's not a curated purpose. That's not a curated purpose. Okay. The other thing is that one person curates the membership. And in other words, what we're going to talk about, that this is I'm telling you what we're going to talk about. And secondly, who gets to be there? I'm deciding who gets to be. I'm doing the invitations.
Got it.
Those are my rules. Those are my
good.
rules.
So the bottom line is you have to have a leader.
Because I've always kicked myself afterwards every time I didn't do that.
And I'm just going to repeat what I hear. The first one is there needs to be one person deciding what the purpose of this is. And the second is curating who's in the room.
Yep.
Got it. Well, I like to say in the harsh terms of a little bit of Minnesota, lay it down there is it just takes one turd in the punch bowl and everyone gets sick. And that's true. You can think of those meetings, just like you say, the biggest regrets we have is just like, who the hell let that jackass in the room? And no one ever wants to come back because for whatever the reason is. So, okay. So let's say we've stated the purpose. We've got the right people in the room. How do we create an exceptional experience where people feel as though they have experienced a transformation during and after? And I know one of the things that you talk about is people always walking away happy. But if you start from the end and then move backwards, I'm curious what your Tarantino version of this story should be.
Yeah, well, I'm very much into structured methods. In other words, that the way we talk about things, there's going to be some rules to it. Okay, and the first thing is that what we're going to talk about is going to be driven by a question. Okay, so it's not going to be a presentation about some thoughts or that I have. I'm just going to have a question. And the question relates directly to the purpose. And you have been chosen because you've proven in the past to take questions and really create some great answers, that everybody can benefit from. Okay. And a certain amount, in a previous podcast, we talked about dinner at Babs and Dan the night before workshop days. And we have, 10, 12 people who are going to be in the workshops the next 2 days. And we come in, we have drinks at 6, and then, around 6:30 or so, we go to the dinner table and we spend a couple hours at the dinner table. And we have a method. We go around and said, first of all, everybody just talk about something that really was great progress during the last 90 days. Now, this is dinner. This is not a mastermind group. This is dinner, and everybody does that. And then, and there's someone who keeps the process going. If someone goes on a little too late, you say, okay, let's go on. That was Stephen. Now we're going to have Mike. Mike, you talk about it. And that'll be Babs or it'll be me, at the dinner. But there has to be some rules because rules protect group engagement. Yeah. Not everything can happen. One person cannot dominate. Another person can't go off track, in other words. There's some policing that is done and everything like that. But when I do group engagement in a workshop format at Coach, and it's either a total of 6 hours with lunch in there, or it's a total of 2 hours. And those are my two formats. And but my biggest thing is that people can very quickly think about their thinking. So to me, the power of the group engagement is how people are able to think about their thinking in a new way as a result of the focus question. And then you are able to, in some ways, write down some of your thinking about your thinking, your insights. Okay. And this, I don't want to go off on a long sidetrack here, but there's essentially four types of thinking that people do in the world. They think about things. Okay. People think about what kind of things? Hundreds of different kinds of things. They think about cars. They think about houses. They think about that. Okay. When you are in conversation with someone who's only capable of thinking about things, it's a short conversation because it really gets boring really, really fast. Okay. Then there's people who think about people. Okay. Okay. And Mark Zuckerberg got 3 billion Facebook users because 3 billion people think about people, and they talk to people and they think about people. Again, I'm
pretty sure Mark Zuckerberg thinks people are things, though, but keep on going.
Yeah, but not my favorite, interesting, but not a main course. And then there's people who think about thoughts, but not their thoughts. They think about other people's thoughts. Okay. And we would have no universities if we didn't have people who thought about other people's thoughts. Now, I would say 99% of all, discussion that goes on in the world is about either focused on things, focused on people, or focused on thoughts, or mixing all three up. What never happens is where people actually think about their thinking about what's going on in the discussion. So this is why the curation of purpose and the curation of membership and having rules is so important, because it takes a lot of protection for people just to sit there and think, wow, I've never thought about that before. Wow, I'm seeing all sorts of things here. Okay. And then giving them a chance to kind of break from a main group and get in a smaller group and think about what I'm seeing here and what everything else, wow, this is really, really interesting. And, one of the things, I got to make a really big decision here. I didn't see it until we had this discussion, but there's a decision I have to make. And I am just wasting a lot of time on something that isn't going to be allow us to do that. So that's when people talk that way, they've been thinking about their thinking, and they said, I've just made a breakthrough in the last 90 days. I didn't even see before we had this discussion. And this is really amazing. I'm glad I came here. And there's an appreciation for what was going on in their head. And to me, that's and whatever it is, doesn't matter, just so people get in touch with it. Because I find people are at their most creative, they're at their most decisive, and they're at their most useful to other people when they're thinking about their thinking. But it happens very rarely in a world that's cluttered with thinking about things and thinking about people and thinking about thoughts. So that's my little dissertation on...
Well, I'm going to tell you what I heard here, because I'm going to summarize it. It all sounded like blah, 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 drinks at 6. So I think the big takeaway is just add liquor. No, I'm just kidding, Dan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. 10 times. That's the guaranteed 10 times the amplifier. $1.
Lube them up.
$1 of alcohol gets you a 10 times result. Even if it's an unpredictable result, it gets you a 10 times result.
All right. Red wine and a little bit of tequila. All right. So here's some of the things that I got. One of them is the structured methods, which is talking about things with rules, and the things meaning the 4 types of thinking, but then
questions, mainly it's question driven.
Right. Is driving, what we're talking about is driven by a question. And we're going to get into some of the specifics.
Can I tell you the question too? It can't
not
be
yet. Not yet.
Okay.
I want to do it after I summarize. I'm going to make a point, and then I want your questions. So don't forget, because I want to kind of package those up. The next one we have is rules protect group engagement. So, and again, you use some examples like not going off track, nobody dominating. The 4 types of thinking, which is things, people, other people's thoughts, or thinking about your thinking and what goes on inside the discussion, which is as freaking nuanced as you can get here. It's another non-obvious Danism. It takes your brain, your simplifier brain, to really nail that. I'll tell you, just on a functional level, I want you to share some questions, but I'm going to give you a couple that I use, and then I want to get your parade of them, because this is the fun part of the show. So one of the things that I open up every one of my meetings with is, on a scale 1 to 10, how can we make this experience an 11? And what do you want to walk away with when it's done? And I really pay close attention. I take notes. And I think I told you this in another episode, but one of the best I ever got is Charlie Epstein was at one of our last experiences at the fishing trip. And I've got a whole new group coming to this next one. None of them know each other, completely different audience. But everyone was like, I want. And Charlie said, what I would love to do is see if there's something we could all create together collaboratively. And that one thing really rocked me thinking about reframing the question and asking it a different way, which is the collaborative mindset right from the start, the onset. And that was a non-obvious answer, but I loved that. And then the second one is the theme of this next mastermind I'm doing in Guadalupe Valley. So I've got a sommelier. We're staying in the nicest resort in the valley, and I've got and the food there is spectacular. It's just breathtaking. And so the theme is highest purpose. Is one thing I've been noticing lately amongst a lot of business owners, founders, entrepreneurs, is they hit a brass ring and they realize they feel lonely and like they are not valued. And part of that's when they have a really successful business and they've worked themselves out of a job, they find that they've got to motivate themselves in different ways. And they get stuck for a little while because they maybe spent 30 years getting great at the stuff. And now that they're really great at it, it's like, oops, I just worked myself out of a job. Now what? They are asking the now what question. And it often happens around the 50s. So with that, I want to pass the baton to you. And what are some of the best questions that get things rolling?
Well, this is going to be based on a podcast or a couple of podcasts that we actually had where I said, Mike, one of the things over the last podcast, you were able to identify that there were 6 moves that you've made from the very beginning back on the farm. And they were all enabled by improvements in technology. So you've had basically 6 companies. And the question that I'd like to ask you about the 6 companies is, when you start a new company, what's always true? What's always true that you feel very, very combined that it can't be the company I had, it's got to be a new company? That's the first question. And the second question is, when do you know that an old company has served its purpose and now you got to invent a new company? Now, first of all, I'm basing that on a conversation that we both know and we both talked about it. So there's common ground right off of that. But the other thing is, only you know the answer to those 2 questions. I have the foggiest idea what goes through your mind. And so you're the expert. You know, one thing you have to find, always talk about people's experience, because instantly you've got a very real expert, the only expert in the world on that person's experience. And, but they've never been given the opportunity to show just how expert they are about their own experience, you know. And that, I just think that is extraordinarily valuable to people, to be able to be given the spotlight to talk about their experience and then to actually discover something new about their experience that they didn't realize, because no one, you couldn't talk about it in this way before. So I'm really big. And, you know, I do this, I do this if someone is a monologuist, if you have someone who just goes on monologues and they just got to go. Can I ask you a question about what you said here? You know, you talked about, you know, something I remember. It happened about 15 years ago. And I say, this was the experience. And now you just had a quarter when you had a real breakthrough. So can I ask you a question? The 3 things that are so radically different that you're feeling right now from the way you were feeling 15 years ago. They never thought about before. No one asked them this. It's entirely new territory, but they're the only expert.
And even when you're working with a monologuer, you pin them down with something specific and you say, I want 3.
Yeah, well, monologuers are scripted. They've got a routine that they've memorized. And if they wear out one theater in one town, they just find themselves a new town with a new theater.
Uh-huh.
And I won't let them get going on their script.
That I love that. So so here's what I got out of it so far. So first of all, your questions, in your case, you gave these two. You always talk about someone's experience. You're going to ask them a question that they haven't had a chance to communicate, spotlight the experience, and then help them discover something new. In your case, what you just said is, can you tell me the three things you learned or take away? And they can only be their own expert.
And they have to be created on the spot. So there's an act of creativity, because they've never given this any thought before, but they're the only ones who have the information. They're the only ones who have the experience. And as the questioner, I feel I'm really doing good for the person by doing this, that learning something valuable about their experience, I think is just a good thing to do for another person.
Yeah.
And they instantly feel that this is a very, very special occasion.
Yeah.
I've never been allowed to think these thoughts about my experience, except, when I'm with Mike and when we're in a situation like that. And, yeah. So anyway, it's interesting. And, but the thing is that as the questioner, you've got a role to play, and your role is to be useful to the people in the group. It's not to sell your purpose or anything at all. You're just, I want them to get maximum value. And if they learn uniquely new things and good things about their own experience, I got to believe that's a powerful reward that they probably won't get anywhere else.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've noticed, I've probably run masterminds for the better share of 30 years now, 25 for sure. And what this is doing, and probably the biggest and most valuable thing that I see, is when you give people a sense that they've been given a platform. And what's great about this is it works even when you break people down into small groups, which you're great at doing. It's like when we're doing a strategic coach exercise, you open up with a simple concept that's a tool designed to help you think about your thinking, create insights. So it's a self interview tool. And then we break into groups and discuss it. And then you curate from that, and you pick people and say, what was your biggest takeaway? What was something that you realized? What was an insight that you gathered? And I think this is it's an insight machine that feels like you've been granted a platform. So why don't you talk a little bit about the power of...
Well, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. And it was with an actor that you were on the plane with, and you wanted to engage with this actor. And,
can I say who it is, or is this a punchline?
Well, it's up to you. It's up to you.
Oh, it's fine. It's Richard Dreyfuss. Yeah.
Yeah, Richard Dreyfuss. And you simply said, did you say Mr. Dreyfuss or Richard? I don't know what you said.
Yes,
anyway,
I didn't know if I could call him Richard yet, so I said Mr. Dreyfuss. Yeah.
Mr. Dreyfuss, I've got an idea, a really great idea for money for your foundation. Yep. Well, and then let's say that's the plane ride, and now you've got a meeting with him. You say, yeah, and he said, first of all, make sure you've done your research on the person's foundation. And you just say, I've noticed there's been like 3 different developments to your foundation. And I just wondered, and can I tell you what I think the 3 developments of your foundation? Well, of course he wants to know what you think. And even if you're wrong, it doesn't matter. Who else is thinking about the 3 developments of his foundation, And then you say, so can I ask you a question that where you are right now, your purpose was this big when you started, but it's like this right now. Okay. And that may seem that it's not as important, but from a marketing standpoint, it's 10 times more important. Okay. And here's what I think you can do now with your foundation that you couldn't do back then. Well, geez, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, what's he going to say? He says, I mean, first of all, it's been 6 months since he's had an intelligent conversation with anyone in his world. Okay. So, wow. And everything. I had very interesting, there's an outlying city that I had when I was a one-on-one coach, and I was on the train to go to this city, but one of the towns that it passed through is Stratford, Ontario. And Stratford, Ontario is the Shakespeare Festival. So Stratford, England, and they have a river that goes through, and it's the Avon River, and they have a river that goes through, that's the Avon River. And so I was sitting there, and a person sits right next to me. It's Maggie Smith, she's only been acting for 70 years, and everything. And I said, "Hi, are you going to Stratford?" And she said, "Yeah." And I just said, "Can I ask you, like Stratford, England is like it's like the center of this in the world, and now you have, there's Stratford, Connecticut, and there's Stratford, Ontario. So if someone like you, who are famous for your work at Stratford, the UK, what different experience do you get when you come to one of the other theaters like Stratford, Ontario?" And I had her going for an hour and a half. It was an hour and a half thing. And she'd answer one question, then I'd ask her another question about her. And when I got, she got up to leave, and I said, "It's really been a pleasure." She said, "This was one of the nicest train rides I've ever had in my life," and everything. And, she's busy and she's got fans and everything like that. And one of the things was that it was entirely about her. And I knew she hadn't thought about any of these things.
And that's, I don't remember who I said. Well, there's two. One of them is always talk about the other person's favorite subject in the whole wide world, which is more about them. But one of the things that Vivian always said to me, she's a great interviewer. When I first met Vivian, she just asked questions and questions and questions. And she said the best way to be interesting is to be interested.
Yeah.
And it's so simple. But I think from a formulaic point of view, and I've watched you do this over the years, there is a high degree of improvisation to be a great interviewer. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that you can be guaranteed of is, and what you really leverage is, how have things changed? Yeah. Okay.
What have you learned? How have things changed? And here's the thing that where all of us, you, me, and everybody else in the world, is that it's easier frequently for other people to have an overview of our experience than it is for us. Okay, because they have no emotions attached to the experience. We're ours is not just jelly; it's peanut butter, it's mayonnaise. I mean, there's a complete mix of things, and we don't see things as clearly as other people do from the outside. They can have a very astute observation about something because first of all, they're kind of interested in you, so. That's a great thing. Someone is an observer, but they're an intelligent observer, and they're observing not things to complain about or criticize or, to manipulate or anything. They're just observing, you've had, and I think I said, I've, followed you from, over decades, and this was the 1980s. I was talking about, and she's in her 80s right now.
She's 86. 85. I looked her up. Yeah. She's Dame Maggie Smith. She's a dame.
Yeah.
I don't know what makes someone a dame, but
well, dame is like sir. It's knighthood for women.
All right.
It's knighthood for women. Yeah.
It sounded at first like the way I'd interpreted it is sort of like, hey, do you check out the gams on that dame over there? You know, it doesn't sound like, I thought it was maybe a little bit of a, but all right. Well, I'm going to have to use that. I'm going to call my wife Dame.
Yeah.
I just want to know one quick question.
If you don't have a queen between you and your wife to make it official, it might be misinterpreted.
All right. Well, that's all right. Yeah, that's smart. Like I call her the queen, but and I want to have one other important clarifying question. Did you imply that you mix jelly, peanut butter, and mayonnaise, or were you just using those as examples?
I'm just saying that our lives are not neatly packaged.
I'm giving you a hard time.
Yeah. All right. No. It's funny because the people that make sense to have in your life are people who help us make sense out of our own life.
Yes.
And the other thing about it is, I'm not doing this to be just to be a master questioner or master thing. That is my intent. All my material for new content and coach program comes from these unique experiences so I'm deeply interested in how this person, is feeling change and is learning things. And this adds to my knowledge because I have to create new things, there's some oldie goldies like the moving future that you can throw in every workshop, but you can't have two oldie goldies in a workshop. You got to have new material. And, so I'm just deeply interested. I'm only interested in entrepreneurs. I'm not interested. If a CEO, I'd be dead to a CEO. Like if a CEO, I wouldn't have the foggiest idea what to talk to that person about. I have the foggiest idea how life operates in a corporation. And what's more, I don't really care.
No, I think one thing that you and I for sure have in common, which is if it involves getting permission from other people to invest in what you want to invest in, that's a crappy deal all along. Eels kill deals, and a CEO's life is filled with eels. Yeah. And what you were just talking about, I don't remember who first told me, but the best thing a creative entrepreneur can have is a living laboratory filled with paying customers, anxious and excited about the next new thing. And what you've done is you've really trained an audience to expect and behave a certain way within a context, which makes you have to teach people to consume. The problem,
that's right. Very interesting because as a result of Tucker recommending that we do a joint book, the big book payoffs, because I had the little book, the book Breakthrough, and then Tucker had, he had the opus, and I always felt mine was too short and he felt his was too long. And he says, why don't we put them together? He said, I'll write the book, we'll publish the book and everything else, and we'll get them out to all your clients. I said, well, if we're going to do that, I'll build a workshop to, everybody gets the book and then they can come to a workshop and you can actually coach people, how they would get a book started. Well, we started in January and we've done 3 workshops, and he's got like 80 people have signed up for a book project. This is more than $1 million in revenues so far this year. But he says very, very interesting. He says he talks to his team. He's got a vast network of freelancers in different parts of the book process, but he has a central team that manage and oversee all the the progress of the customers who sign up for his various parts of his program. And he said they came to him and they said, I know it's hard to do right now, but in the future, can we only have strategic coach customers?
Exactly.
He said they know what they want. They're very easy to deal with. They're very coachable. They like having a game plan that they can make progress on, as long as they can report back and get insight by the progress. And he said, all your people are they're fit for a company. He said they're fit and everything. And I said, well, I said, some of them have 20 years where there's rules. They come in and there's rules, and some of the rules are explicit and some of the rules, you just say, that doesn't work in here. What you're doing doesn't work, and it's not anything that ever got said, but it's just, it's a form of politeness or it's a form of etiquette. There's a coach etiquette, and, you don't brag because you're all great. If you're great, you don't have to brag, and if you're vague, people think you're a phony.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you talk about something, talk precisely about what it is. If you're vague about it, they say something wrong here. There's no reason for an entrepreneur to be vague with other entrepreneurs, unless you're, that was kind of interesting. I watched over the weekend. I do watch videos, but not movies on the internet. But I was watching 3 different ones on Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos.
Yes.
And one of the things
very fascinating.
One of the things that the reporter, who is a real hero, this guy is a real hero, because everybody wanted this to work. Everybody wanted Theranos to work. I mean, that was part of her trick, is that she just the whole world wanted this to work. And,
it was a great offer, offer.
Yeah, yep. And everything. And the John Carreyrou, I think his name is, Wall Street Journal investigative writer for the Journal. And the Journal really has great investigative journalists. And he said she was never specific. He said, you'd look at her things, it was very vague. It was very metaphorical, and she talked in images, but there was never anything specific. And he says, I'm an investigative reporter, and bing, 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 bing isn't specific. He said, people with real stuff are very, very specific, and everything like that. But it was just interesting. And she patterned herself on Steve Jobs. She dressed like Steve Jobs. Her calendar every week was Steve Jobs' calendar. If he did something only on Wednesdays, she did it only on Wednesday. And then she took voice training to drop her voice. So here's this, great looking woman. And she's got this Clint Eastwood,
like
Clint Eastwood, a man's got to know his limitations, and everything like that, and everything like that. But it was just so fascinating to me. She had George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, General Mattis, Rupert Murdoch, the Walmart family, Walgreen, the CFO from Walgreen. She had them all wrapped around, but there wasn't one medical person on her board of directors. Not one medical person said, wait a minute. Anybody with any lab experience, they didn't get near her, anything like that. But it just shows that the desire for something to be true is, it's a very powerful force, and she was good at it. She's good at it.
Just sell a little hope. Hope's a
compelling offer is much more. Dean Jackson, he says, a compelling offer is 10 times more powerful than a convincing argument.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well,
so what have you got, Mike? So what was new? What was confirmational? About because obviously you're doing something really right with the the first ones that you've had, and you had another one where you went to Omaha for for Warren Buffett and everything like that. So you've done other things like that. Well, ever since I've known you, it seems to me that you're putting together special events, masterminds, and discussion groups. So where are you with this now? Now, this is a bit, the next one is probably a step up in terms of, the setting, the the atmosphere and the environment. So what has our conversation added to your thinking?
That's a fantastic question to help me think about my thinking. So here's what, first of all, I'm going to get much more structured in this experience. And I do have one more question that I'm going to ask you, but I'll answer the question, which is, I do this because I really am fascinated now by collaboration more than ever. If there's one thing that I got out of Free Zone, it's thinking about, the distinction between 10x and 100 or 1,000 times is, I really understand why you're so fascinated with that thinking. Okay. Mm-hmm. I really had a grok moment, and I thought, why limit yourself? 10x isn't enough. And the only way to create much bigger opportunities is by putting a bunch of really smart people in a room who have shared values and mindsets. So they by nature will have commonality. I've also found that quick starts of like 8 through 10 are the perfect kind of people to put in a room like that. Mm-hmm. And so I get that kind of thinker, and they all have to have a history of being belongers and coachable. Okay. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the real common patterns. Mm-hmm. And another thing that I've found is they are platform minded. Mm-hmm. Now that can either be that they've created or want to create their own platform. They've been media trained, know how to communicate and speak, but also they think of their business as a platform. Mm-hmm. And so when you get those mindsets in a room, you have an explosion of not just ideas, but implementation, like that. Mm-hmm. And the abundance that comes out of it. And these are not people who are like, oh, I need an NDA before I can talk to you about it. They know that an unimplemented idea has no value. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I've learned is I didn't think about collaboration through a lens of rules until fairly recently, or mm-hmm. I had it around me, but I didn't see what the components were, mm-hmm. nor was I fussy enough. So getting back to what you talked about the curation, mm-hmm. I would I'd let a stinker through the gate. And for whatever reason, either I didn't choose to say no, even though instinctively I just knew, ugh. And I think the last part of this is I really, really trust my gut now. If I feel any kind of a physical yuck when I'm around someone, it's sort of like I've noticed that with food now. I don't even need to eat it and know my body won't like it. I kind of feel sort of weird thinking about it. And I'm like, nope, not going to eat that thing. Same thing about people. If I just get just a little bit of skeevy, I know they're the wrong fit. It doesn't matter what it appears they can offer or how wealthy or successful they are. That isn't what matters. So that would be as good of an answer as I would say
that one of the kind of sensor warnings that I look for is any indication that they are lacking cash confidence. Mm-hmm. In other words, they came to get an idea they can make money on right away. And I said, no. You already know how to make money. You didn't come down here to find out about money making. I'm in that position. We went through the entire, COVID thing, and we took advantage. The Canadian government had a
might as well take the free money.
PPE. Yep. First of all, it's our money anyway, better used. If the government gives me my own money back, I'll use it better than what they were planning to do. And anyway, so I have no problem with that at all.
I know you love booze and dancing girls, Dan.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it was useful and everything else. But Babs and I have done a really marvelous job of creating our own bank, and and it was sitting there, and we've been building it for 30 years, and and we were able to tell the team, look, be relaxed. This is handled. There's no danger whatsoever. Everything. We're going to take a real hit this year, but we took just trying to think here. Yeah, we took like a third hit from the year before on revenues, but we were still reasonably. We were still in the black. We were still in the black with that, and we're back up to we'll be back up to 80% this year, and the emergence of the Zoom global workshop program is worth 10 times down the road. So I told our team, I said, the money, it wasn't in 2020 what it was the year before, and it won't be this year, but just consider it a down payment on a much faster 10 times future. And I said, we just invested in an entirely new way to think about the future of our business, and it's already proving itself. And I said, that's what it is. And everything's great. And I think that, the people you want at the table who aren't making phone calls to check up on cash flow.
Oh, yeah. No, I have a saying that it may sound harsh at first, but it's I never make your business about working with the broken. That's what charity's for. So your job is to work with the highest value, highest end person, because if you work with the broken, you're going to resent your business, you're going to resent your customers, and you'll wind up broken too. Yeah. So, and that again, just like you got to be careful about letting the right ones in, and knowing what that distinction is, which is this does not mean don't be charitable and don't be philanthropic. Your philanthropy is what you do by being focused on the right ones. Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't want anyone to get the feeling that someone has a receivable that's more important than what everybody else is getting out of the conference.
Yeah. And desperate people expect something for nothing. The list goes on and on. Anyone who's ever run a business long enough knows that if you look at your 80-20, 80% of your problems come from 20% of your clients. And the first thing I do when I work with someone is I tell them, give someone, not you, the right to fire all of the lowest 20%. First of all, it's the greatest way to create confidence and trust in the organization. And also you'll learn things that you might not know about what's really going on and how people have been accommodating all kinds of bad things. And that 20% that you open up creates a 40 to 60% energetic and spiritual opening for more of the right fit people. It's the fastest way to probably increase your revenue by 40%, 20% for sure, no brainer, but it's usually more, and it'll reduce the size of your support team.
Yeah. You're betting your future on people who are shorting yours.
Yeah. Okay. So I have one final question before we wrap this one up, which is, when you help people realize the fulfillment, value, outcome transformation, the transformation language, if you were to describe a question you love to ask, other than what have you learned or how have things changed, that they experience that results in advance, that transformation, the realization, the aha, but also walk away going, my God, that was the best strategic coach meeting I think I've been to. I don't know how Dan does it, or whatever the big takeaway is. What's something that just consistently creates that sense of value?
Well, I think since this isn't, the event that you're talking about in the events isn't part of a regularly revisited, it's a one of a kind. I wouldn't, when I know I'm going to see them at at the longest 90 days from now, and we'll probably see them a couple times during the next. I can simply zero in on, I say, what's the biggest achievable takeaway that can go right into action and be achieved before your next workshop? And then I go around the room, and what they talk about. But in your case, what I would have a longer range question, and I would say, okay, it's kind of like the DOS question, and you're saying, okay, it's a year from now, okay, and we're talking a year from now, and looking back from a year from now, what can you already see is the biggest breakthrough decision you've made as a result of your thinking through here? Yeah.
So it's another future-paced question. It's a variation of the Dan Sullivan question.
Yeah, and the thing is that people that you're inviting have the ability to put themselves in the future. I mean, that's the reason why you curated them and invited them, is that they're people who are able to put themselves into the future. And one of the things I've discovered is, and I haven't really articulated this in any kind of concept or anything, but it's just, kind of something that seems so clear to me. People will come into a workshop and say, I got to make a decision between this and this and this and this, and it's driving me crazy. And I said, well, it's impossible to make a decision in the present. I said, you have to go, let's go 3 years. So I said, it's 3 years from now. And based on where you want to be 3 years from now, which of the three things that are, you're dealing with right now is the one that most has to be solved right away? And which one 3 years from now, it wouldn't even matter to you 3 years from now that this is a problem? And then immediately they go there. There's a number one. One of them gets eliminated. And the other one said, I can just take the second one and make it part of the first. But they couldn't do that if they were just looking right now, this today, tomorrow, the next week. There's just too much going on. But 3 years out, it sorts things out. So, there was a great, talk about great thinkers. Lincoln, before he became president, so this would have been before he was elected president, gave his speeches were very short. I mean, his speeches were 10 minutes, 15 minutes. He had very short speeches. But he gave one to a educational institution in New York City, educational artistic community. It's called the Cooper Union. Still exists. And it was called the Cooper Union Address, where in 1860, he predicted the United States in 1960. Okay. And he said it's going to be the greatest economy in the world. And he went on, he had 5 or 6 predictions. And then he said, but none of this is going to happen in the future if we don't settle this issue right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's brilliant.
And that, the Southerners, they seceded because they know a serious man had just become president of the United States. And they knew that there was no negotiating, there was no bargaining. And, it wasn't so much slavery, non-slavery with him. There can only be one country. You can't have two countries.
Yeah, that's
Can I say we can wrap this up because I've gotten a lot out of this.
Yeah, okay. This has been a great.
I've gotten a lot out of this, and here's the thing that I think why this is so important for us to talk about this right now is that I think this type of structured conversation, structured mastermind, is 100 times more possible today than it was 2 years ago. And I think people take it more seriously now than they took it 2 years ago. I think it was part of their lifestyle 2 years ago. This isn't lifestyle stuff.
And why do you think that, other than you're talking separate from the pandemic and the Zoom world we live in? Like, what's the key distinction?
I mean, because of that, I think that the world has, I think the world has divided into the seriously excited part of the world and the
maliciously stupid.
The frivolously endangered part of the world. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. There's a very good chance that President Xi will not be president of China in 90 days because of this Evergrande scandal.
Isn't that just
this is $300 billion, and it's tied to every part of the Chinese economy. And there's no bailout. There's no bailout. You can't bail it out. 1.5 Chinese are going to get totally screwed within the next 2 or 3 days. And these are not peasants, peasants behind the cow. These are people who have bet this is their fifth mortgage.
Whoops.
This is like Chernobyl. This is like Chernobyl. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell people that things can really happen fast in this world.
Oh yeah. No, the network effect, and this will be
you know what set this up in a very weird way was that super tanker getting stuck in the Suez Canal for 6 days. It just killed the global supply chains. It was one thing that multiplied out in 6 million directions of late. This was late. That was late. This company went under because they couldn't make their payment to do this and everything, just because this tanker and that's how interconnected and dependent everything is. And right in the middle of it all is this massive Chinese debt. They've got the greatest debt in the history of the world,
That is a topic for another episode that I am really, really interested in, is the notion of wealth and what is wealth now and what is leveraged wealth and network-based wealth versus what has historically been wealth, meaning simple wealth, like a stack of gold, for example.
Yep.
And then,
by the way, that's still good.
Yeah, it is.
I have to tell you, a stack of gold is still good. I think as part of everybody's diversified investment, you should have a stack of gold.
Yeah. My only problem with gold is there was a period of time I bought a bunch of gold and silver, and I realized as I put it in my pockets that if I had a pocket full of gold or silver and the tigers came in town or the zombies showed up, whoever has the most gold is going to be eaten the first.
You'd be slow.
Yeah, exactly. It was a horrible idea. That's when I decided I got to find some other options. Well, I agree. I think this has been one of the more fascinating episodes we've done.
Well, and I think it's the first layer. I think there's more layers to this one. I think it's a continual learning. I mean, my notion of what can occur in a workshop, a strategic coach workshop this year compared to 2 years ago is, it's much broader. I see much more possibilities than I did, and it's just fascinating. I mean, there's nowhere else I'm trying to get to.
Yes. And there's so many more ways to create value in a shorter period of time with less effort. Mm-hmm. And I think this is in some ways has been some of the worst of times for certain people. I know for you and me, it's been some of the best of times. I feel better equipped than ever before. Truth is, I've had great years, and found a whole bunch of ways to simplify and have a lot more thinking time, a lot more time off, and the quality of my family is better. And I have fewer people around me. The ones I didn't want around me showed me exactly who I didn't want to be around. It made the conversations and the separations that much easier. So, this was fantastic. And what I'll do to reach out to you listening, if there's a topic or an idea you want Dan and I to cover, head over to capabilityamplifier.com, leave a message for us. Hit the website. There's also a form where you can submit any kinds of concepts, ideas that you'd like to share with us. And I'll put it in front of Dan because we love going deep on deep conversations. If there's something we missed, let us know. And we'd love to take on some big ideas if you got one out there. Anything else you want to add, Dan?
No, I would just say that I think that, being entrepreneurs, that we have a degree of freedom to explore things, discuss things, that I think that people who are tied up in dependent systems really don't. That the CEOs of major corporations cannot have the type of discussion that we just had, for the half hour, or the kind of event that you're planning in Mexico. They couldn't possibly go on an event like that. And, that that their security, their future and everything is not within their control.
So true. All right. Well, thanks again for another great episode. See you in the next one, Dan.